Welcome to Last in Line podcast, where we are highlighting, showcasing, and spotlighting great leaders of faith who have overcome adversity, cultivated resilience, and served others in a significant capacity. So settle in and be encouraged by this episode of Last in Line podcast. Hey, I want to welcome Justin Moseley. That's Dr. Justin Moseley, the mindset doctor, to Last in Line podcast. Justin is by trade a former chiropractor who turned international speaker and transformation coach. He and his wife actually co-founded one of the largest natural health clinics in Tennessee. But after surviving a near-death accident, whitewater rafting in 2018, Dr. Justin Moseley shifted from changing lives in a clinic to changing lives from a stage. He has become a highly sought-after international speaker. He has created programs. He's the host of the Power of Mindset Summit and the Comfort to Calling Summit. In fact, he has created programs called Comfort to Calling, Claim Your Power, and a mastermind called Mind Shift Inner Circle. Justin and I discuss his near-death experience. We discuss self-limiting thoughts that really kind of hold us back. And our greatest gift from God is our potential. So some of the reasons we fall short of that, some of the reasons we box ourselves in, and he gives us practical ways to get out of our own way. He gives us some of the practical tools he implements in his mindset visualizations, but it's more than that. It's not your typical visualization. He goes into that. We talk about what's called the baseball technique that he developed, and I was very interested in that, very intrigued by that, being a baseball guy, and I think you will too, see how simplified and how practical he's made this. And so it's all about confidence. It's all about staying out of the zone of complacency, and how contentment can be a good thing, but it can actually be something that tethers you to your own limitations. So I will say it's an honor to have him. It was a pleasure to get to know him. And so I know you're going to appreciate the real world techniques and real world application he brings. So welcome, Dr. Justin Moseley, to Last in Line podcast. Hey, Dr. Justin Moseley, welcome to Last in Line podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Good to meet you finally, and have a couple mutual connections. And you are the mindset doctor, so no pressure. You are going to fix all our problems today, and specifically all of mine. And so hopefully you came prepared for that. We do like to break the ice a little bit here. We're a little odd in relation to some of the other, I guess, podcasts that are out there. But I gotta go the time capsule route on you. 100 years from now, we stumble across time capsule in your backyard. Okay, it's got your name on it. I want to know one personal item that would go in there. I want to know what 80s band recommendation you would write, or maybe you would even put an 80s band cassette tape in there if you're old enough to know what those are, and then an author recommendation for that 100 years from now person that you're like, you guys got to read this guy.
Well, I would put the book Think and Grow Rich, because I think it's just a timeless classic that anyone should read. 80s band, if they count as an 80s band, I will put Metallica. The Black Album was in the 80s.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with that. And then author, again, Napoleon Hill, man, because if They Can Grow Rich. Outwitting the Devil is actually one of my favorites from Napoleon Hill, though. That's a really good one.
I might have to get that one. I have never read anything of his, and I keep hearing his name pop up, and I know he's not a new author, of course. People have read him for years, but I got to get some of his stuff. All right. So what if we were able? One I left out. What hat or shirt of a favorite pro or college team would you put in there? Sports team.
I would go Tennessee Titans.
There we go. All right. Backyard. You had to stay backyard on me. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, don't hold it against me.
Other than that, Atlanta Braves. I'm a big Braves fan.
Okay. Good. Don't hold it against me being here in Houston with the Texans and interdivisional rivals, although we don't present much of a threat right now. So I'm a Saints fan at heart. Yeah, rebuilding for 10 years. But my Saints did get Derek Carr, which I'm pretty excited about.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
he's a good dude. Well, man, we're going to talk all things mindset, all things mental capacity, mental approach, perspective, those kinds of things, which may or may not be right up your alley. I'm guessing I'm going to take a stab that it is. But before we
Yeah.
go into that, man, give us a little bit behind the curtain on Justin Moseley and how you became a chiropractor, but more importantly, kind of your faith journey along the way.
Yeah. Well, like you just mentioned, so I'm a chiropractor by trade. My wife's a chiropractor as well. We started our practice back in 2012. And even how I got into that, I mean, my dad's a video producer here in Nashville, and I grew up around that. I thought that's what I was going to do. When I grow up, I'm going to be a video producer. I went to college for that. But at the time, when I got to college, I became a personal trainer. Really liked helping people. And my roommate at the time was going to chiropractic school, and he kind of told me about chiropractic. And I really liked helping people on the physical side. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to go the chiropractic route. Did that. We opened our practice. Life was good, man. We built a great practice, helping lots of people, making a difference. I was living my purpose until 2018 when I went on a men's trip, men's retreat. We went whitewater rafting, and our raft tipped over. We got to the class 5 rapids, and I was sitting on the back of the raft. We flipped over. I got actually trapped underneath the rapid itself, and it started pushing me under. I still remember the sound of my helmet scraping down the rocks. I was being pushed underwater, and all of a sudden, just everything went black, and then everything went bright white, and it was the most peaceful, serene feeling that I'd ever felt. And I don't know how long that lasted, but it felt like eternity. And then I hear this voice that said, "Wake up." And thankfully I did, because I came back to consciousness and I was trapped underwater, wedged between two rocks.
Mm.
And I tried to push and I didn't budge. And I kept pushing, kept pushing. Nothing happened till finally my adrenaline kicked in. And I just went into overdrive and I pushed hard enough. I was able to break the buckle on my life jacket that was trapped under one of the rocks. And I floated to the top, got washed down the river. And man, at that point I was rocked. Adrenaline was still pumping. Like, what just happened? And
Mm.
in life, we all question our purpose. Like, why are we here? But after that happened, I asked a different question. I was like, why am I still here?
Mm.
Because things could have been different in that moment. Like, what if I didn't hear wake up? What if I wouldn't have been strong enough to push and break free? I know I'm here for a bigger purpose. Why am I still here? And that's a question I'll pose for everyone. You don't have to go
Mm.
through a near death accident or have a rock bottom moment to change. You can change right now. So ask
Mm.
yourself, I mean, right now, you have air in your lungs, your heart's beating. You woke up this morning for a purpose. Why are you still here? And when you contemplate that question, man, God's going to light a fuel under your fire. And that's what he did to me. And I realized, because again, I was living my purpose, but what I realized is I was playing way too small. I
Mm.
knew that God had called me to go bigger, help a lot more people, not just locally in my community, but around the world.
Mm.
And that's when I stepped back and I was like, man, if I could just do something that brought me joy and helped people, what would I do? And for me, I'm very passionate about mindset and personal development. I read my first Tony Robbins book when I was 16. I still got the
Mm.
original copy. And that set me on this path of, man, if you change your mind, you can change your life. And I think that the work that I did helped lead to success we had in business. So I was like, I just want to give back. I want to put out content on mindset and personal development. Well, I don't even know if anybody's going to listen, but I'm just going to start putting it out there. And actually, I started a Facebook group at the first of 2020, and it grew to 1,000 people in the first month. So I was like, all right, people
Dang,
are listening, they're wanting more. So that was kind of the launch of everything. And that launched
dude.
me into leading retreats, and I do mastermind groups, coaching, all this stuff, speak
Yeah.
all around the world. Was very blessed to be able to speak at TEDx, which was a bucket list thing for me. And I was actually speaking at a mastermind retreat, and one of the guys was like, dude, you're the mindset doctor. And I was like,
Yeah.
hey, I like that. I'm going to go with that. So
Nice. All
yeah, that's
right.
kind of
Well,
my journey there.
that's cool. I mean, like you said, not everybody has one of those life-changing, life or death moments where they kind of come back and it could have gone either way, in that split second. But you kind of made the most of that, and maybe a light went on in you that just kind of said, "Hey, I think God's got something bigger than what I'm doing," even though you were doing good stuff, right? You weren't a
Yeah.
train
Yeah.
wreck. You
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
doing good stuff. And then you just kind of hit another gear, it sounds like. What did you, so was that the beginning of your faith journey, or did you grow up in church? I mean, did you have some spiritual mentors along the way? Talk about some of that.
Yeah, no, I grew up, been a man of faith all my life. Went to a Christian school growing up. Even I, from starting our practice, I've started multiple businesses now based on two things. One, that Jesus didn't come to be served, he came to serve. So it's all about that heart of service, which aligns with the Zig Ziglar quote of you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want.
That's right.
But it really stemmed back to my faith belief of, man, this is what I'm about. I'm here to serve people and make a difference. And I even had people along the way like, man, you got to separate your faith from your business or you're going to fail. Like, well, you know what? Then I'm going to fail because this is who I am. I don't push my faith on other people, but I show up with the heart of service. And because I am a believer, we show up a certain way. And I think, especially for other believers, man, it's attractive. We want to be in this together, spreading the good news, man. So yeah, I grew up in it. It's been a part of my life all my life, and very
Yeah.
proud of that as well.
So I mean, I'm going to assume, but you can elaborate some. But I'm assuming your dad was a good role model, and then maybe you had some coaches along the way. Did anybody stand out to you kind of before that chiropractor school moment in your life? Was there somebody that stood out that you kind of looked at and said, that is a picture of leadership? Did that word even ever enter your radar? And who was kind of the best picture that for you along, and what did you get from them?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's twofold because yes, my dad was a great mentor and leader because he was an entrepreneur. I grew up even in elementary school. Over the summers, I'd go to work with him and watch him build his business. And I thought how cool that was. But he wasn't in church when I was growing up because he had been hurt by the church in the past. So it wasn't until later in life where he actually came back. And he was still a believer and still loved Jesus, things like that. But he wasn't the role model as far as like taking us to church, being the spiritual head until later on. But they still, my parents sent me to a Christian school. So I did have that upbringing. So there was definitely mentors there as far as the spiritual mentors to help move me along that way.
Well, that's good. Yeah. I wonder how people come or get on that path spiritually. And then I wonder, because you don't grow up, we don't grow up, people don't grow up thinking, I'm a servant leader. I'm just here to serve others. Like that's not innate in us. Now, maybe we're wired that way deep down because we're in the image of God, of course, and he was all about serving, but we don't grow up with, we're writing fireman or policeman down as what you want to be, not, I want to be a servant leader. So this true picture of servant leadership, which is what this podcast is all about. And, you have been in service most of your professional life. It sounds like all your professional life. When you decided to shift into coaching, speaking, masterminds, and this mindset doctor approach, what was your picture of success? Like, what was your barometer? What was your gauge kind of, okay, I'm hitting this out of the park. This is what I'm supposed to be doing with this. Like, what was feedback? What was that? This is what good looks like in your mind.
Yeah. And I think it goes further back because like you mentioned service, and that's why I'm glad that's the topic of this podcast because that's a huge thing. So it goes back to my senior year in high school. We had a buddy of ours that passed away from cancer and he was on the baseball team with us and the whole baseball team went up to the field and we were just walking around the field. And I remember 18 years old, you have no concept of this. What's the game of life we're playing? But we just lost a close friend. And I remember saying to myself on that field, I was like, one day I'm going to come back here and give back because I'm so blessed from the way I've grown up and the mentors that I've had. And I just want to come and give back. So I think from that moment, it's always been success to me. Yes, there's financial success and things like that, but it's really how much impact can I make? How can I give back? And there's always been that kind of mindset to me of the money's going to be there as a side effect of the giving that you do, the serving that you do. When you serve, you're rewarded, which is another topic that with Christians is a hard one too, because we have our giving hand and our business hand. Sometimes we do way more giving and serving and doing for others than we do actually receiving. So we got to work on that too. But I think underlying for me, success was almost measured by how much impact can I make in the lives of others.
Yeah. Yeah. We are a little bit apprehensive to tell somebody we make a good living, or we are sometimes the Christian community thinks that we need to be in posture of, I guess, lack in order to
Mm,
be more super spiritual, which
yeah,
is that's nowhere in the Bible.
yeah,
In fact,
yeah,
I would argue you can do a lot more for the kingdom when you have resources,
yeah.
and I'm sure you would agree with that. When so the I want to go in a direction on this talk of, because I think you talk a lot about contentment and comfort and those kinds of things, and I also want to talk about a little bit about confidence going forward. But before we do, you made mention of, I guess it says you're a leading expert in personal transformation. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a broad topic. So
Hmm.
do you have something that you sort of hone in on that you're laser focused on, or are you casting a broad net just across the entire spectrum of transformation?
Hmm.
And then I want you to unpack that, and then I also want you to tell me a little bit about the baseball technique. I was intrigued by that.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, the personal transformation space in itself is broad. And part of it is it comes from my own work that I did on myself. And I
Mm-hmm.
grew up, had self-esteem issues, self-confidence issues, limiting beliefs, lack, scarcity, all these things that were holding me back. So I had to break through that myself. And now that's what I get to do for other people. And there's a friend of mine, his name's Rory Vaden. He runs Brand Builders Group. And he has a saying that says, "You are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were." So for me, a lot of that stuff that I went through in my own transformation is now how I'm serving other people.
Can you say that again for the
Yeah.
audience? Because I think that was powerful.
Yeah. You are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were.
Mm.
So thinking about
'Cause
that,
you
all
can
the stuff that
empathize,
you've been
right?
through, yeah,
Absolutely.
you know what that person's thinking, what they're going through, what kind of person did you wish you had at that point, and you get to be
Hmm.
that for someone else. So for me, and I'm looking at the mindset piece because I do a mixture. It's mindset, it's business, it's all these things. But what I usually have people come to me because their business, they need a breakthrough in their business. But what I quickly realized, it wasn't the business. It wasn't their systems, their procedures, their marketing. It was them. It was their level of mindset and personal development that was holding them back. And then once they broke through that, their business took off. So that's what I really focus on. And a lot of times it's the subconscious mind, the subconscious programming that we have, because we can try to think positive and set bigger goals and do all these things, but it's our subconscious programming that actually, I call it, there's an analogy of the thermostat. So just like the thermostat in
Hmm.
your house, if it's set to 70 degrees, if it gets too hot, the AC kicks on and brings it back down. If it gets too cold, the heat will kick on and bring it back to 70. We also have a financial set point based on our own programming that keeps us at a certain level, based on our own beliefs of what we think we're worthy of, what we deserve. And I see this in business all the time. People try to work harder and can have a really good month, but then they go back to their old ways and they go back to their old set points, their old self-sabotaging patterns. So I help people break through those, basically reset the financial set point so they can break through those barriers and take their business to a new level.
Yeah, I kind of wonder I mean, there's a line there, what you described is they have a good month and then they revert back. Is that because they get complacent or they stay trapped in the old mindset of limitations, would you say?
Yeah. So it's a complex thing because a lot of times it's unconscious. We're not
Mm.
even realizing we're self-sabotaging ourselves. And in my message, so back to my near-death accident, one of the things that I realized was I had gotten comfortable.
Hmm.
And comfort for me could look different for someone else. For me, things were good. Money was good, marriage was good. We were traveling with my wife, doing things, life was good. So I got comfortable there.
Hmm.
For other people, things aren't going well, but they're not willing to do the things necessary to get out of that because that is uncomfortable to step out of that situation. So, whatever the situation is, we get comfortable in life. And the message I got for myself from my near death accident was if I truly wanted to step into the calling that was on my life, I needed to exchange my comfort for my calling
Hmm.
because it requires getting uncomfortable to really step into the calling. Now, one of the things that people bring up a lot, but well, shouldn't you just be happy with wherever you are? And yes, and Paul talks about in the Bible, like I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. When I've had plenty or when I was
Yeah.
in need, I'm content in all ways. But the problem is when you become content and complacent. And I think that's where comfort comes in. When you have contentment and you're just complacent, you're not willing to really go for what God's called you to go to. And because I truly believe like God's gift to us is our potential, what he blesses us with.
Mm.
But our gift to God is what we do with that potential. So if
That's
we can
good.
develop our own potential to do better things for him, bring honor and glory to him, make a difference, like that's why personal transformation is so important to me.
That's good, man. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think people get stuck in the, I guess when people hear the word contentment, it almost seems like there's a element of finality almost in context. Like, so I've
Yeah.
arrived. I'm
Yep.
content. I've arrived. That's it. This is as good as it's going to get. And
Yeah.
really,
This is
that's
all
just,
that's for
yeah,
me. Yeah.
it creates a new baseline, is all, if you ask me. Like, once
Mm-hmm.
you attain something and you're content, you're like, yes, that feels good. I'm fulfilled. That's the baseline now. Then you're
Yep.
going to the next step, right? So your
Yep.
baseline continuously elevates. And
Yep.
and so I totally agree. And that's what, that's once we agree with that, and once we conceive that, then our potential, we can sort of meet that and rise to the occasion there. I
Yep.
love what you
And
said about, go ahead.
most people think that they get to that level and they're like, this is all that's possible for me.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like to show people is to really know what's possible for you is to push for what's impossible. Because if you don't actually go for what you think's impossible for you, you'll never know where your limit is. And what I find is when people actually push for the impossible, they do way more than what they even thought was possible for themselves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
strive to do even what you don't think is possible, because the reality is it's not you. It's when you combine with God, man, you're unlimited. Your potential is unlimited. You can do far more than you even realize. So push, align with his will and
Yeah.
push for the impossible.
Well, I mean, you're a personal trainer, and I lift weights too, and there's a lot of guys that are into their fitness, and I mean, you like getting to failure sometimes with a spot, because then you're thinking, because if it was left up to me, I'm thinking, okay, I can only do this, but with somebody kind of there, and I can actually get more weight up, and when I go to that failure, then I know, okay, here's my ceiling. Now I can work from there. And sometimes you're
Yeah.
right, we get too fearful, we get too comfortable, and we don't push that ceiling beyond what our little limited mind in our own strength can
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, and I love that analogy because lifting weights is a perfect analogy, because the more you do it and you push yourself to that failure, it does a couple of things. Mentally, it lets you know where you can go to,
Mm-hmm.
and then it actually pushes you to grow. And as your muscles grow and you get stronger, then what was failure for you isn't any longer, because you can actually push to a new level.
Yeah.
An example for me, back in the day, I wanted to squat 500 pounds. And I remember I got to 405. You put the plates on there and you're like, this is my max. This is all I can do. So I added a 2.5 pound plate on each side. And then that would be my new max. And then the next time, another 2.5 pounds. And all of a sudden, then that becomes the next 25 pounds, then the next 45
Yeah.
pounds. And it's those small little incremental changes, but you got to push yourself to do that.
Yeah. The thing
All of a
about
sudden, I hit
weightlifting,
500 and it was like, what was inconceivable? Like, I don't think I'll be able to do that. No, I did, but with the little increments
that's
in reason.
insane. Well, the thing about weightlifting is no progress ever comes through comfort, never comes
Mm.
without pain. And we
Yep.
we can translate that into real life too, I believe,
Yep.
because you got to stretch your capacity, and nobody likes stretching, and nobody likes breaking down a muscle in order for it to grow. Nobody likes breaking down bad habits, bad mindsets in order for us to grow. But that's just
Mhm.
part of it if you do want to grow. And we get to really find out what we're made of, and if we really do want growth, we get to find that
Yeah.
out real quick. Is
Oh
there a
yeah. I
common
talked
thread?
about that.
Yeah, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
talked
Yeah.
about that in my TED talk, because when we step out of our comfort zone, we hit the fear zone. And the
Yeah.
fear, because it's uncomfortable. It's like that's when the fear, the worry, the anxiety shows up. Like, oh, this is the danger zone. So what most people do is they give up there and they just shrink back into their comfort zone. Well, if you're able to push through that zone, then you get to the growth zone. And the growth zone is like lifting weights. You have to have resistance for your muscles to actually grow.
Mm-hmm.
And the more resistance you have, the more strength you have, and the more your muscles are able to grow. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the same thing in life. The more resistance you face in life, the more you're strengthened and the more you're able to handle. So then you can actually push through the growth zone into the impact zone. And the
Mm-hmm.
impact zone, that's where everything is in flow. You're able to make an impact, leave a legacy that you're called to live.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, guys, the brain is a muscle if we're talking about
Yeah.
mindset. So we're talking about building muscle, right? So you got to break down some of that and you got to stretch what you thought was the limit to beyond that. So yeah, I mean, we have to learn. In order to learn more information, we got to strain the brain, right? So talk to me a little bit about confidence. This word's kind of been on my heart lately. And looking around, I'm raising teenagers, I'm raising young 20s, and people are, we're transitioning kids into stages of life. And I got one getting married in a month. And so confidence is important in transition. Talk to us about kind of what works with your clients in this regard, or what worked for you because you did make a transition. You had to step out and you had a transition from chiropractor to mindset doctor. And I guess my question, in a really bad way of asking it, is there something that stands out as a common thread for people that get back their confidence?
Yeah, I think it starts with understanding that confidence comes through experience. So, and speaking is one that I know personally, because speaking is one of the top fears. When you ask people, what are they afraid of? People fear public speaking more than they fear death.
Hey, before we get back to the conversation here with our guest, I want to thank one of our sponsors, a new partner, Uncommon, which is a ministry that is equipping and empowering great men to become the husbands, the fathers, and leaders they were called to be. Go to uncommon.org. That's UNCOMMEN.org. Check out their content. Go to YouVersion, download their devotionals. Great team, great people, great men, and they're out there for you. They're out there with great content, and they're out there to encourage us to be the men we were called to be. So I want to thank TJ and his team at Uncommon. So now let's get back to the conversation with our great guest here at Last in Line Podcast.
For me, when I got in college, I took a speech class and I almost failed the speech class because I had a panic attack during the speech. My hands were shaking, my voice was shaking, my palms started sweating. I started getting numbness in my hands and feet. Like, it was weird. And I created a story that you should never speak in public again. This is not for you. You don't have the confidence to do this. Give this up. And I believed that story for a long time. I had this nudge in my heart, like, man, I want to speak and be able to communicate and influence people and impact people through my words, but this isn't for me. That was a story I believed. So what I did to flip that, one, you have to make the vision of what you want to do bigger than the excuse. So the excuse was, this isn't for me. I can't do this. No, the vision was, what if I don't do this? What is the impact that people are missing out if they don't get to hear me speak? So I shifted. I made that bigger. And then I actually pushed myself into uncomfortable situations, because the only thing to do, overcome that fear, is to get out there and start speaking. So I started doing that. And each time you get a little bit more confidence, and you get a little bit more confidence and a little bit more confidence. So that's one level. So each experience you have gives you more confidence. Then you have a successful talk. You know what that feels like. You're confident. Hey, I can do that again. You get more confidence. Here's what I love to do with people, though, because the mind can't tell the difference between something real and something vividly imagined. So if I went out and I gave 1,000 talks, and I've given well over that now, but when I was first getting started, if I gave 1,000 talks that went really well, that would give me a lot of confidence, right? Like, I'd have a ton of confidence. Well, at first, I didn't have the ability or the opportunity to go out and do 1,000 talks. So what I started doing was mental rehearsal, vividly seeing myself giving the talk, feeling what it feels like to look out into the crowd, make eye contact with people, seeing them nodding their heads. When I finished, seeing them give me a standing ovation, feeling what that feels like. And I trained my mind to understand and really feel that I was a confident speaker. And each time I did that over and over, I actually became a confident speaker from that. And that's why professional athletes, and I work with different celebrities and professional athletes, and we do a lot of mental rehearsal to help them become the person they need to become. And then they actually can live that out. So that's one of the things that's worked for me and for my clients is that visualization, which I don't even think visualization is deep enough. It really is mental rehearsal, putting yourself into the moment and really feeling it. And you can boost your confidence tremendously by doing that.
Yeah. I like what you said earlier too, about kind of more along the lines of the cost of not doing something outweighing the cost of doing it, or the risk of doing it, right? The cost of not doing it in your mind was, there might be that one person out there that hears what I have to say, that it changes their life. So if I don't, I owe it to them to press through my fear, press through my apprehension, my insecurity. And because there is, if you visualize a crowd out there, there is somebody out there that needs to hear what you have to say, to the point of public speaking. That, I mean, that could relate to anything. My son, in his senior year of pitching baseball, his pitching coach had a big game coming up. He was pitching the next day, and it was a big game. And so his pitching coach had him lay down flat on the ground with his eyes closed, and had him describe every batter, every pitch to every batter through the whole lineup. He went out and struck out like 15 guys and threw 5 shutout innings. So visualization, you're right, but you got to put yourself in the moment by speaking those details, visualizing every tiny specific detail, and it puts you in that moment. And then when you're in that moment, you're not overwhelmed, right?
Right. Yeah. And so fear is when we're making it about ourselves.
Yeah.
So if we're afraid, like going up there and pitching to the batters, and we're afraid how we're going to do, we're making it about us. So specifically for speaking, if you're afraid of speaking, it's because, what are people going to say? Or like, they don't like the sound of my voice, or I'm not funny, or whatever stories you have in your head. You're making it about you.
It's pride, you think?
That's part of it. Yeah. Because we think, oh, I want to do a good job. But if we flip it, and fear disappears when the mission to serve is clear. I'll say that again. Fear disappears when the mission to serve is clear.
You've been working on that one.
Yeah. So
you've been working on that one.
Instead of saying, hey, it's me up here, it's about me and how I'm going to sound, how I'm going to do, it's like, goes back to that mission. No, there might be one person that hears what I have to say and their life has changed. That's way more than my fear of what are they going to think that I sound like, or if I say the wrong thing. Like, no, it's not about that.
Well, okay. So you mentioned doing the reps, right? You got to be the right reps. So you hear practice makes perfect, and that's the biggest myth ever. The right practice can make perfect. So right reps make you better. And so I when you to build confidence, obviously you have to do something the right way more times, and then you become more confident. Can you talk to me about, because I had a guest on last year that talked about arrogance, and he thought arrogance was healthy. And I kind of agreed with that. When he said it, I didn't agree, but then I started thinking about it, and I was like, maybe we've had it wrong with arrogance. And I know it's all in how you come across, but do you have anything maybe you could put some context around arrogance versus confidence, and where the overlap, or if there is one?
Yeah. And it's hard to know without context of what the conversation was, but there is a fine line between confidence and confidence and arrogance.
Yeah.
And I do think that part of the reason why we do lack so much confidence is because we don't want to come across as arrogant.
Yeah.
We don't want to be cocky, because we've all seen that person that we're turned off by, and we say, we don't want to be like that. So instead of pushing our confidence up and getting too close to that, we actually lower our confidence.
Yeah.
Because we're like, nope, I don't want to be like that. I want to humble myself, especially believers. We got to be humble. And if I put myself out there, that's being prideful. So that's part of our own mind games as Christians. But man, God didn't give us a spirit of fear. He gave us a spirit of power and boldness. So I think we do have to increase the confidence and get to that line. There was probably arrogance in people like Paul and Peter, the people that were doing things, risking their life for something. I think it takes a little bit of that fine line, again, without being cocky, without crossing over, because then it becomes about me. I think kind of how I live my life, which I think is a great way for others, is, man, make the mission bigger than you. The purpose is, and I think it all comes down to the condition of the heart. If whatever you do in life is about you, that's where the arrogance comes in. But if you make it about, for us as believers, the bigger purpose is honoring, glorifying him. How can I use my talents and abilities to get better to do that? Man, let him align with my confidence and have a firm conviction in that. And I think some people can take that firm conviction and call that an arrogance or a cockiness. But I think it's more of a confidence backed with conviction.
And it could also be about the audience's insecurities in themselves, that they interpret what you're doing as arrogant or cocky because they feel less, right? It could just be that you're really good. at what you're doing, and they're just really not. But they could obviously label you as arrogant depending on how you come across. But I agree with you. If it's not about you, you can still have a boldness about you. If you're not making it all about your rewards or your accolades and accomplishments and validation, I think, yeah, great. That's a great way to put it. I wonder too, whenever you talk about, I want to get your kind of your definition of contentment, because we'll kind of coming back to that. But I've always thought it was more like this. It's kind of where your gifts and talents kind of align with your passion, and then maybe you derive a mission from that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on what is contentment? Have you ever put a definition to it, your own?
Yeah, I think aligning the passions and the gifts and the talents and the abilities is all great because I think that can push us in the right direction. I think the contentment comes when it's pushing us in the right commitment and then we just settle. It's like, oh, I'm good. When really God's called us for so much more.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that becomes our own limiter, is where we become content and complacent. So I think it's those that I mentioned earlier when we're like, oh, we're good and I'm not going to move myself forward because I can just rewind my life. I could have just lived the rest of my life doing chiropractic, helping people. I could have lived a good life and was still living the purpose that God called for me. If I had not had that wake-up call with the near-death accident, I would have never stepped into this calling. Yeah. So I think part of it is realizing that you don't need a near-death accident. The other thing is people have a rock bottom moment, then that's when they want to change. Like you don't have to wait for those. You can actually just sit there and contemplate right now. What if God had something bigger for me? What would that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And pray about it. Get a bigger vision from God.
Mm-hmm.
And I promise you, there's always something bigger.
Yeah.
And it's not because of you need more money or you have to make a bigger impact. Mm-hmm. I think it's just he can bless us with an unlimited amount of resources, talents, and abilities to achieve so much more if we're willing to go there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what because you had an opportunity talking about the near-death moment. You were playing with house money on day one after that. Like you could have really just rested in, I'm just lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
And so you could have just kind of coasted. You got a good career, but you sort of decided this is my wake-up call to do more. Not just be, I'm lucky to be alive, which you were, but it didn't stop there. So I think sometimes we get in this moment of like, well, I got that 9 to 5 steady income. I'm good. Like I can go punch in, punch out every day. It's a solid, they don't ever kind of strive for more. And that's what you're saying. But I do want to throw a couple of true falses at you in regards to contentment. And I don't know why I keep harping on contentment. I guess I just feel like there's people out there maybe struggling with that and wondering, is it okay to be content or should I be like, concerned that I feel content? One of those.
Yeah.
So let me go this route with you. Contentment is comfort. True or false?
No, I think they're content with complacency.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Contentment hinges on feeling valued and valuable.
So this is where the mindset piece comes in because nothing has meaning until we give it meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on the story that we put on in our head. How do we look at this? What does this mean? Because two people can look at the exact same situation and have two different meanings completely. So I think that's one of those that depends on what is your meaning you're giving to this interprets what the outcome is.
Okay, good. Well, I had one more here and I was just kind of looking at it. Contentment is an inconsistent state of being.
Yeah, I could see that because so back to being content in any situation, like Paul talked about in the Bible. I think being content is good. And that's where I think the bad part of it is the complacency.
Yeah.
So, and then here's like mentioning the 9 to 5. Let's say 9 to 5, your kids are in sports, you're taking them to that. Life is good. Be content with that. You don't have to be like, oh, but I need a side hustle and I need to do this and do that. Maybe a purpose within what you're doing is just to be a light for your coworkers. Mm-hmm. When you're going into work, you're not punching the clock and just say, I did my 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. I know I was actually an example for people today.
Yeah.
And that's one of the principles I live by is to live by intention, not by default. Yeah. Too many people are living by default, just showing up and going through the motions, But every single day, if we're intentional, we have opportunities that can bring honor and glory to God.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of
That's
it too. It
good.
doesn't have to be bigger, have to have some Mother Teresa sized vision. It could
Yeah.
be like impacting the people right around you.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Well, okay, I didn't want to skip over that baseball technique. What was that? Because
Mhm.
we're a baseball family, so you're speaking my language. So can you talk to the audience a little bit about that?
Yep. So I have a baseball technique. So you can drop the link to
Yep.
that. I think it's just drjustinmoseley.com/slash
Yep.
baseball. But actually mindshiftlinks.com has a bunch of these free resources and the baseball techniques on there. But what it is, it helps prime your reticular activating system, which is a part of your brain that filters out what you see. So, because right now we have all these bits of information, like even you're listening to this, you're not thinking about what's going on in your left foot. But if I say think about your left foot, you focus there. So where your focus goes, your energy flows.
Mm.
So the more you prime your reticular activating system to see things, the more those things start to show up. And an example is like right now, if you're listening to the radio, if you turn it on one station, it's country. You got to shift the stations, turn it into a different frequency. You can hear rock and roll, you can hear gospel. You have to turn and actually tune into that frequency to get the station you want to get. The radio waves are always there. They're always floating around us. But
Mm.
until you tune in, that's the only time you'll be able to hear it. Well, that's what kind of the reticular activating system is in your brain. It focuses in on what you want to see. So the baseball technique specifically is a mental rehearsal you do. So before you go to bed at night, you're going to vividly imagine a baseball in your hand. You're going to feel the weight of it. You're going to see the stitches of it. You're going to see the writing. Is it dirty? Is it brand new and bright white? Like, what does it feel like? And get really intimate. This is where it's not just visualizing and seeing it, but you're really rehearsing this scene of holding it, feeling the weight. And you're going to bathe your subconscious mind with that. That's what you're doing. You're going to see, hey, I'm holding a baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And you do this right before you go to bed. And as you go to bed, your subconscious mind starts to process that, and it starts to see baseballs. And then the next day, you just get up and you just go about your day. The next night, you're going to do it again. Get really vivid mental rehearsal of a baseball. And you do this 3 nights in a row. And then as you go about your day, you're not going out looking for a baseball. Because right now, you could go out to your garage and be like, I know where a baseball is. So don't do that. Just go throughout your day. And all of a sudden, you'll start seeing a baseball where you didn't even realize a baseball was. And I remember I even shot the video for the baseball technique. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, I'm probably going to see a baseball just because I'm here sitting here talking about it. And the next day, a baseball showed up where I was driving by and I just saw a baseball laying on the grass. That's what's going to happen. So do the technique so you see how powerful it is. Baseballs will start to show up. And the bigger lesson is if you can do that with a baseball, what else can you do with that in life, in business, and things around you?
Wow. Yeah, it reminds me of if you're ever in the market for buying a vehicle and you start researching online, guess what? The minute you buy that vehicle, after you've done all that thinking and strategizing and, filtering different details and benefits, all of a sudden you see like every intersection, that vehicle,
Oh yeah.
every
Yep.
single one.
All the
So
time.
no, that's good. So how did you determine 3 days was the magic threshold? Is that
Yeah.
clinical?
No, it's just experience. It's the
Okay.
fact that just doing it, and the more the better. Like if you want to do it
Yeah.
longer, because then I have people do it financially. They want to hit a certain financial number, they do the same thing. Because what we have to do is train our mind to get there before we even get there. So one of the principles I call it is live from the end. You want to create the version of yourself of who you want to be,
Yeah.
the type of money you want to make.
Yeah.
What decisions do you make as that person? And then you start living from the end. You start having the habits and the routines of
Yeah.
that person. You start feeling what it feels like to make that amount of money, to drive that type of car, whatever it is for you. And the more you start vividly imagining that, the more opportunities and things come into your life to bring that to you.
That's right. That's right. I just had that conversation with my son. That's how God works. I mean, there's no way we could have scripted this conversation because 30 minutes before I had this conversation, we were trying to figure out how his priorities got so out of whack with school and scheduling and just organization. And I said, okay, you're in a miserable state right now because we had some catastrophic stuff happen. So we were like, okay, you're remember this feeling. Now back into how this semester started and what could have been done to prevent us landing where we are right now. And
Mm.
you take that, it could be good or bad. Like you could see, I want to make six figures, and then back into habits and those kinds of things to get there. But it can also be people who have made catastrophic mistakes in their life, people who have done something just horrendous. They get here and they realize that pain and they're like, okay, I could back in and find out, when did I start looking at that website? Oh,
Mm.
when did I start associating with that person? We could kind
Yep.
of trace our steps, right? And I
Oh
think
yeah.
it works
Yep.
both ways. Have you ever had a situation in your life where well, not a situation, but maybe give us an idea of how you have sort of created a habitual structure of discipline and repetition in, let's say, business. Let's just say
Mhm.
business. How have you, what's it look like for you on a daily? I'm imagining you're a very disciplined person. So what does that look like for you?
I think the first disciplines become in your routines. So I believe in a morning routine. So morning
Mm,
routine sets up your day, but the evening routine sets up your life. So the evening routine is much more powerful because what you bathe your subconscious mind in
mm,
before you go to sleep, your
mm,
subconscious mind will actually process why you fall asleep.
mm,
So this is why I deal a lot in business with the subconscious mind, because we can have all these big goals and dreams to do all these things, but it's our own limiting beliefs and our old patterns and our subconscious programming that will actually keep us from achieving that.
mm,
So I do a lot of work around the discipline of training my mind to believe that I can accomplish that. I mean, I have one client who's got a $12 million business, and he still has his own limiting beliefs that kept him going from 10 to 12. And he'd already created a great business, but there was still, every level you go to, there's going to be some mental block that's keeping you from going to another level. So my disciplines come around that. So once you get from that, I think it's less, and it's part of the principles that I teach. It's actually less about what you're doing and more about who you're being. So a lot
mm,
of times we get so caught up on all the things we have to do, and we do too much of the wrong things versus being who we need to be. We can actually do less and accomplish more.
mm,
So I think this will cross over into business. But one of the first things to start with, if you're not doing it, is having a gratitude practice and getting
mm,
disciplined with that. And I think most people do gratitude wrong, anyways. Like even if you're doing it, a lot of people, it becomes a checklist. Oh, I'm thankful for my wife, my kids, my car, my house, the things,
mm,
and those are great. But you don't actually feel the gratitude. You just checked it off your list that you were thankful for it. What you should really do is pause. Really think about how much you love your wife and you care about your wife.
mm.
Really think about how grateful you are for your kids and that you're able to take them to that baseball game or whatever it is. Feel the gratitude. The feeling is the key. That's what's going to
Yeah.
change everything, because everything is energy, everything is frequency. And when you can tap into the frequency of gratitude, opportunities in business, the people, the connections, all these things start to align and business starts to change.
Wow. Yeah, I like that. Just that pause. That's a big deal. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of self-made folks, quote unquote, I think they feel like, man, if you rest, you rust. If I
Yeah.
if I can't keep moving and shaking and going and shooting for that next thing, then I'm losing. If I'm not
Yep.
winning, I'm losing. And so I
Yeah.
think there is something to be said for obviously rest, but for pausing and taking that day. I didn't really think about it at night being as crucial for that, like you were mentioning. But yeah, I may have to start doing that, because it does set you up. Because if the morning rituals or morning disciplines set the tone for your day, the night sets the tone for that morning discipline. Like, so if
Yep.
you
Yep.
wake up not feeling like it or not in a good frame of mind, then you're not going to do that morning discipline, which then here we go, hamster wheel
Yep.
of affects your entire day.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So, all right. So as we wrap up a little bit here, did you do you have I'm sure you have many, but did you have a scripture growing up or something that your family sort of stands on, as far as a Bible verse and something you guys kind of go to if you were going to have a family T-shirt printed with the scripture on the front? What do y'all have one?
Yeah, mine always growing up was I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So it was like, man, and that's always tested my limits of my own belief. Because if I really believed I can do, if all things are possible, because that's what it's all about. I mean, I think it's Mark chapter 9 where the guy says, if it talks to Jesus, it says, uh, if you're willing, will you heal my daughter? And Jesus is like, what do you mean if? All things are possible to he who believes.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was like, yes, help me with my unbelief.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that Philippians 4:13 for me is like, yes, all things are possible. Now it's up to me to truly believe that. If
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that, then what's next? What can I truly accomplish with God?
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. And I get that one a lot. I think that was one of the first ones I memorized as I was getting, becoming a Christian. And it never gets old. That one applies to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Give our audience a kind of a parting shot for, I guess, just mindset in general and limitations, because that word limitations kind of popped out quite a bit here today. So give the audience some encouragement about their own limitations.
Yeah, no. So part directed to business. Success doesn't come to you, it comes from you. It's all about who you're being and not what you're doing. So you are what you think about most of the time. Your thoughts become things. And there's only three things you can really control: your own thoughts, your own feelings, and your own actions. And it's your thoughts, feelings, and actions over time that's led to your circumstances now, good or bad. The beauty of that, if things are great, you can actually create more of that with the same thoughts, feelings, and actions. But if things aren't going the way you want, you can change that. But it starts with changing your own thoughts, your own feelings, and your own actions, and really believing what's possible. And a great way to increase your belief is surround yourself with other people that are doing what you want to do and help borrow their belief and see what's possible for you.
Mm-hmm.
But don't limit yourself, because all things are possible for him who believes. You can do all things through Christ.
Mm-hmm.
It's surround yourself with the right people, feed your mind every single day, because your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions are going to take you. They're going to, well, I like to say it this way in business: you can't create $1 million business on a $500,000 mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make $100,000 on a $50,000 mindset. You always have to grow your mindset. And as you do that, you become limitless. You can always go to a new level.
I would even inject words in there with feelings and thoughts and actions, because how you talk about yourself and your circumstance is huge.
Yes. Yep.
So, all right. So, I was going to wrap it up, but I have one more. It just kind of hit me.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like God's working on in you? So you keep talking about who you're being, who you're becoming, the person, your DNA. What's God working on you the most in this season right now?
Yeah, just making a bigger impact. So even locally here, I just got asked to run a men in business group. So I've taken that on. I'm actually in talks right now of getting a TV show where I do kind of this style, where I'm interviewing successful people and they talk about their journey to success. So it's all, and what's cool about it is, yes, we have to make plans, but honestly, it's like God is directing the path. It's his plan. So I have to be open to whatever happens. So I have this abundance mindset that there's more than what I can even imagine right now. So that's what God's kind of working in me right now. He's like, I've got something big planned. It's going to come in the way I least expect it. I'm just open to receive and then take direction from him. And man, just focusing on that impact, though, is the season I'm in right now.
That's good, man. That's good. Now, is there a book, or will there be one?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of writing a book. I've co-written a book with a friend. We went through a traditional publisher, and it's been held up forever. I don't even know when that thing's coming out, but I'll have at least one, probably multiple books coming out, though.
Okay. And then your website, where's the best place you said earlier to find your resources?
Yep, mindshiftlinks.com. I have a bunch of resources there, or check out my podcast, the Mindset Doctor Podcast.
Cool. Well, man, it's been awesome. I love all the topics that you kind of dove into for us, and all of them translate to any area of life. It's not just business. It's not just fitness. So spiritually, relationally, and maybe we can bring you back on to give us some mindset tips on relationships next time, because we didn't get to really hit like being a dad, being a husband, those kinds of, being a good friend, those kinds of things, because guys kind of suck at being friends, really, or I do. But
Yep.
no. So I appreciate it, man. Audience, he's been Justin Moseley. We've been Last in Line. Be blessed.